Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to the Guru Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Assembled Vaishnava devotees. And all glories to our revered speakers for today. Devotees, we thank you all as always. Beautiful. Today we have His Grace SRIMAN MUKUNDA Prabhu and His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari, who will be sharing with us the genesis of Hare Krishna movement in West Africa. We started yesterday. We began yesterday, and it was opened up by His Grace Ishwara Prabhu and Chandrasekhar Prabhu, and I'm sure that we all learned so much from these amazing devotees. And of course, we were also fortunate most of the other senior devotees were here. So because it is historical facts we're trying to share, so sometimes one may leave out something and another person may remember and then chip it in. So it was so beautiful. And we're going to simply and humbly request you all, dear devotees, that you all mute yourselves if you are not speaking. And in fact, we should have suggested to you all to have maybe Debrox yesterday, just to clean your ears and also clean your hearts. It's beautiful how it is said that sometimes one can drink with the ears. So we are simply trying to request the devotees. We're going to drink the nectar of how Krishna consciousness started in West Africa through our ears today. And with that being said, SRIMAN MUKUNDA Prabhu, to those of you who may not know who Sri Mukunda Prabhu is the same our beloved, wonderful, transcendental EKENDRA Prabhu. His name is changed, but he's the same individual. I say he's the same individual in the sense that he's the same person, but he is not the same person you knew 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're all growing, so his growth is even more magnanimous. And it is our honor to have his association with us today. So Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, welcome back to your own home, the home you started with many wonderful souls to build. You have revisited your home. So please, the floor is open to you and you may begin. We know the stories, the pastimes are so much. Who knows? We may have to do a second phase. Yes, who knows? But there are two of you speaking today. So we suggest that we try to speak within 1 hour. It depends, but within 1 hour so that the other speaker may also speak. But like we said, along the line, something may be forgotten and then you remember and then you chip it in. So Hare Krishna, I'm talking too much. I'm taking so much of your time. Please, the floor is open.
Hare Bol. Hare Bol, my Dandavat Pranam to all devotees. Hey Shri Guru Ganadas Vanana Datta Kuranaya Kasindu. Vrindavana Sinavatar Prasida Shirara Pranaya Prachara Ajana Lambito Budo Ganakarakato Sankirtana Kapitro Kamla Taksho Vishwambro Dvijvayo Yugadama Palo Vande Jagapriya Karo Karuna Avataro Gurave Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dhanavad Pranam devotees, I cut my Stav and Stuti short because there is so much to cover on this wonderful topic. Prabhuji had asked, first of all, that devotees give some description of their own genesis and process of coming to Krishna consciousness. As we know, universally, most devotees who have come to bhakti in the Western world have come to the grace and potency of our Srila Prabhupada. My own story is not different. I'm going to show one photograph here. I did bring a lot of paraphernalia, and Sahadev will help me along the way, but this I did not send there. But this photo, which I'll take down in a second here, this was a photo of my uncle who was a disciple of Paramahamsa Yogananda. And that photo was taken in the late 50s. He came to live with us during the time that I was in high school, and he began to teach myself and my elder brother, who passed away maybe 5 years ago. And he began to teach us yoga and meditation and about Vedic literature. He was a member of the Science of Self-Realization Fellowship Organization. So for many, many years, we were attending his classes, obviously, and being with him. But the amazing thing happened in 1972. He had been reading about Krishna, and he wanted to actually have a copy of Bhagavad Gita. So we called the local Iskcon temple, which was at 439 Henry Street in Brooklyn, New York. And we asked the devotee some, more esoteric questions about Krishna and how Krishna left the world. And the devotee said that, well, normally we don't discuss these things on the phone, but we have so many books here that you can get, which will explain everything. So at that time, there was what was called gypsy cabs, which are the equivalent of what is today Uber. So we called the gypsy cab. My uncle gave me $50 and sent me by gypsy cab to the temple. And that was my first darshan of Shri Radha Govinda, which are the deities in New York. And the devotee was extremely kind. He bought down way more books than $50 would have paid for. And he also gave me prasadam. They took me around the temple. And he told me that every Sunday they have a Sunday feast and they have a whole program. So I returned and I had given my uncle the Bhagavad Gita. We both looked at it. Of course, it was Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And my uncle sat on the bed and he kept saying, oh, as it is, as it is. So he was really thrilled to have what he knew now was an authentic copy of Bhagavad Gita. So, we began reading it together, but I decided I was going to start going to the feast and program that he described. So I would go every Sunday to the Sunday feast. And later in that same year, 1972, our Srila Prabhupada had come to Brooklyn Temple. So of course I made arrangements to go there to have the darshan of Srila Prabhupada. And by mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Mahaprabhu, I was able to get darshan and hear Srila Prabhupada's Hari Katha when he spoke at that Brooklyn Temple. Later on, in 1973, my uncle and myself, we moved to live together. And of course, I was a little bit older now, getting past high school, getting ready to go to college. And I thought my life would be a little bit different. Now it's time for sports, athletics, and other sort of young adult activity. But my elder brother insisted that we stay the course of studying with my uncle and now reading Bhagavad Gita. And my elder brother decided he would start attending the Hare Krishna temple with me. But I decided that I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do academically, so I elected to go into the military. So I went in the United States Air Force, and I stayed there for 2 years. It was the end of Vietnam. And so they were giving people an early out, so I took advantage of that. And then when I returned home to New York, I was awarded the ability to go to college, and the government pays for it. So I don't know how many devotees are familiar with the GI Bill in America, but I decided to go to college. I started going to Meg Everest College in New York, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but long story short, I got involved in music, and there were many associates of mine at the time who also were musicians. We all were going to college together, and we started getting a somewhat successful music career. It wasn't extremely successful, but it was beginning. But then I thought that I had a kind of longing or yearning to live ashram life. I wanted to know what it would be like to actually live in the temple. So later in 1975, I decided to give my instruments to a good friend. And I asked the people who I work with on a regular basis to give me a little bit of time. I wanted to, kind of find myself, which was a popular term at the time. And they were all agreeable and amenable and friendly that we'll consider you when you come back, you'll still be, on call with us. So I moved out and joined the temple in Los Angeles because I did not want the distractions of living in New York. So while I was living in Los Angeles in 1975, I had the opportunity, I was working in the BBT warehouse. And at that time, one day, one person came in and everybody started to chatter, like very much like, oh, this person is here. And the person's name was Ganesham. So I guess you know where this is leading. So I saw him, and of course, seeing that he was also in a Black body, and the amount of respect and the amount of enthusiasm that all the devotees were generating, I got really excited to want to meet him. But he was really kind of strictly there on business. He was working with the BBT Library Party at the time, and so he was ordering books for that program and his travels. Later on, when I got back to the temple, I tried to see if there was a possibility to meet him and locate him. But as things would have it, it was unfortunate that I did not get to see him again at that time. I got a message that I should call home, and I called my parents this was later, 1975. This was just after we had written to Srila Prabhupada for initiation, because I think it's still a practice up to Srila Prabhupada's Samadhi that when you wanted to take initiation, you had to actually write a letter to Srila Prabhupada and request initiation. So the first Bhakta program had been established in New Dwarka under Danavir, who's Danavir Maharaj now. So many very wonderful devotees, Badahari Prabhu, Amala Bhakta, so many nice devotees were in that Bhakta program. So we all wrote to Srila Prabhupada for initiation. But I got a message from home. And when I called home, my mother told me, I'm really thrilled that your life has taken the turn it's taken, and that, rather than getting involved in street life and so many other things, you've taken a spiritual life. However, I think you should be a little bit prudent that the government is paying for you to get an education. I think maybe you should try to follow through, maybe finish school, and the temple, I'm sure, will be there when you do that. So, I took heed to that. And because my parents were really supportive, I went back and went to college. And when I was leaving the temple in Los Angeles, the vice president of the temple president was Tulsi Das at the time, but the vice president told me that we would have to not accept your letter going to Srila Prabhupada or retract the letter, because you can't live outside the temple and be initiated. So I guess that was part of the criteria at the time. So I was not upset with it at all, because I understood, people can't monitor your lifestyle and everything if you live outside the temple. So of course, now things have changed drastically. Many people live outside and are initiated. But anyway, so I went back to school, but getting back to school, our music careers kind of boomed at that time. So everyone was becoming very successful at musicians. And my brother also had a produce business. So between the two things, I was making a significant enough living that I went ahead and pursued music full time. Part of my daily schedule was doing recordings in the morning and so many things. Long story short, I would always play
Well, Hare Krishna devotees. All
And
right, thank you.
some
Do you know what happened?
I think he's having probably just having problem with his internet. So well, his bandwidth was poor.
I mean, it's America. America means excellent.
Yeah, well, sometimes probably the load, and maybe he's using a Wi-Fi, and his device is not having full access to the Wi-Fi. He is, yes, I would do that. He's been kicked out by the system, but once he comes back, which I believe he surely will very soon. If it continues, then we may turn off the video. So he just uses the audio. But let me see if he came back. Not yet.
His internet is down. He's fixing it. He'll be online very shortly.
All right. Thank you, Maharaj. So
I always think that everything in America should be up.
See, America is not the America you think of.
yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you for coming back. Your system was probably overloaded, so you got kicked out. May you turn on your camera, your audio. Because we cannot hear you yet. No. Let's do this. If you may turn off your video and just use the audio. Let's see, for the time being. All right, so you may go ahead and then speak.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Alrighty. So maybe we'll leave it off. Maybe it's too much.
Yeah,
So anyways,
for now, and then we'll see.
yeah, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
so in 1979, long story short, I'll try to speed it up then a little bit. I met with Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in the 55th Street Temple. And at that time, he had mentioned that he was starting some preaching in the urban areas of New York and other places. And he wanted to know if two things. One, if I could give a donation for it, and two, if there was any way to arrange some programs for his preaching. So being in the musical community, I agreed that I would arrange some programs. And two that I remember were prominent was one was the National Black Theater in Harlem and a very famous bookstore in Harlem called the Tree of Life. So, having arranged the programs and having spent time with him, I became really inspired to want to go back into devotional life full time. And so I expressed as much to Rajalila, and she was also involved in spiritual life prior, though it was not in Krishna consciousness. She was also involved in spiritual life, and she was amenable that yes, but I wanted to check it out. So she agreed, and she, which she'll tell her own story tomorrow. She stayed actually in the temple, and she even stayed in the temple while going to work to see how that would work out. Then she decided, yes, we should do this full time. Long story short, again, I felt that if I stayed in New York, there would be too many distractions due to now my music career being pretty successful, and people call you consistently. So I decided that maybe we should go back to Los Angeles. So we both decided, and we went across country, and we went back to the Los Angeles temple. Rajalila was doing Sankirtan there, and very quickly became very adept at doing Sankirtan. She'll explain her own story tomorrow. But I was feeling some dirt. I was feeling not as inspired. Of course, this is post-Shilakshana that I felt initially living in the ashram. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had made a visit. I spoke to Sanatan Prabhu this morning, and he reminded me that Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had made a visit to Los Angeles, again, to secure books for Africa this time. And while he was there, I remember meeting him this time, and I got his card. And on the card, it was his name, and I remember the organization was called Urban Spiritual Development. And, I kept the card, of course, with the intention that I certainly was going to reach out to him. So I don't know if I told Rajalila about it, but I remember going to a hospital that was across the street from the Los Angeles temple because I wanted to make the call privately. And I called and I told them I was not feeling very inspired being back in Los Angeles at this time. And he suggested that, to come here. I think it's important here to speak a little bit about a lot of the preaching in Africa, because the funding, and in particular from the two devotees, one named Mother, so they were pretty instrumental in financing the project in DC, which was inclusive of the restaurant that we had in Capitol Hill. They were the ones who paid for the tickets for, I know, myself and Bhuta Bhavan to come. I spoke to Nat this morning, he told me Rajalila had collected herself for her ticket, but he also financed the tickets for his wonderful wife now, Premavati, who was Parameshwari at the time, and for Srinath Prabhu. So in 1979, after we had joined Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj at the restaurant, it wasn't too many months later that he spoke that he had had a dream. This is not in chronological order, but he had told that he had a dream that Srila Prabhupada told him to open the door, they're waiting for me. And Srila Prabhupada repeated it 3 times, and he took that clearly to mean that Srila Prabhupada wanted him to go full force into preaching in West Africa. So he himself went to visit West Africa. That was also in 1979 because he was already had taken sannyas, so we know it was in 1979. He stayed in Nigeria, and then he went with Al Shanta Maharaj, who I'll tell the story about that when he speaks tomorrow. But they also went to Ghana and stayed in Ghana for some months, developing Ghana. And then when he came back to DC is when he decided to start sending people to help develop the programs there. Of course, Shanta Maharaj was actually working in Nigeria at the time. And when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came back to America, he gave class one morning, and just right in the middle of Jaya Radha Madhava, literally in the middle of it, he mentioned that myself and another devotee named Papa Staya would go to India, and then from India we could go to Africa to start assisting the preaching. Long story short, the original person who was supposed to go to Africa was Sanatan Prabhu. But I think Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, realizing that himself and Madan Gopal, they were, or Madan Gopal, yes, they were kind of the financiers and managers of that project. I think he didn't really want to send them. Papa Staya also, I forgot what happened, but he was unable to come. So long story short, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had Sanatan buy me a one-way ticket. I think that was part of the managerial planning at that time to make you surrender. So he bought a one-way ticket, and I didn't have any money. You know, I had no more income coming from anywhere. So he gave me $10 US. So with one-way ticket and $10 US, I took a flight. My first stop in Africa actually was a layover in Dakar. And then from Dakar, the plane landed into Lagos. And, you know, I, of course, got out. And I remember taking a taxi from the airport. I had the address to the flat at Bob's Animasham in Surulere. So I took the taxi to the flat, and I gave the driver $10, $10 US, and I was waiting for my change. And the driver looked at me like, well, you know, where's the rest of my money? And I was thinking, well, no, I gave you, US dollars. I gave you $10, not realizing that in Nigeria at that time, the oil boom was going on. So it took $2 to make 1 naira, right? So one of the workers who was living at that flat on the ground floor, he came out when he heard me discussing with the cab driver, and he spoke to the cab driver. He got my luggage out, and you know, he talked to the driver. The driver just waved his hand and said, "It's okay." And so he told me, you know, basically, you got a free ride here because essentially, you know, it takes more than that to get from the airport to Surulere. So while I'm speaking on that, I want to straighten out some history. And I went and researched the video would work without knocking things out. All right, let me see if I can, if it'll open up Sahadev. Hopefully that won't knock things out.
Would you want me to share the photos?
Yeah, we're going to come to that in a second.
Okay.
Okay. Oh yeah, you can actually, because that picture's in the photo.
Okay.
So I found my passport from that time, and the passport.
Yes,
says
I think I saw the passport. Yes.
Yeah. It was from October of 1979. So, but I spoke this morning to Aniha Prabhu in London, in UK, and he mentioned that they also came earlier in 1979. So some devotees mentioned that they saw devotees in 1978. So he told me that those devotees who arrived in 1978, they had traveled to do life membership from the UK, and that team consisted of Jalakar Prabhu. You can hold right there, Prabhuji, and then I'll go on as we go on. That consisted of Jalakar Prabhu. Yeah, those two devotees drove the Daihatsu, the little van we had, from the UK, took the ferry across and drove across through the desert and everything, and they brought that van to Nigeria.
So those were the devotees who arrived there in the later part of 1978. But they primarily were there to do life membership. And it was them who gave life membership to Mr. Gidwani, who was the owner of Sun Factory. And Mr. Gidwani originally hosted Neha, Vyapi, and Brahmananda, who had flown in 1979 from London to Lagos, and they stayed with Mr. Gidwani. When Mr. Gidwani realized that they were going to be staying permanently to try to preach and open a temple, he gave them the flat at Bob's Animasham. So that he gave them that apartment at Bob's Animasham to start the preaching. So that's the history of the 1978 versus 1979. In 1979, after I had been sent to Nigeria, I found out this morning also that Bhutta Bhavan Prabhu, in fact, did come to Surulere. The next person to come was Bhutta Bhavan. Because when I arrived there, only Mahamantra Prabhu, Bhakti Pujapad Shanta Maharaj, was there with Brahmananda. But Bhutta Bhavan came shortly after I arrived. And then I think maybe 5 or 6 months after that, another devotee from America came named Hari Murari. So those were the devotees, myself, Shanta Maharaj, Bhutta Bhavan, and Hari Murari, who stayed at Bob's Animasham. Gidwani had mentioned that he was going to relocate his workers and that he was giving up that flat. So he had given Brahmananda Prabhu a heads up that, we needed to find a place. Of course, it was very difficult because by that time also we had a second van and we had a driver for the van. His name was Tahiro. So we decided, since we had 2 vehicles, that we would actually just go out in 2 parties or so and go out preaching and just, camp or stay in the vehicles. On the very day that we were moving, we were packing, we were moving books and everything, because the living room at Bob's Animasham was filled head to ceiling with books that had been donated by Africa and other books that had been purchased by Sanatan Prabhu and Madan Gopal for Africa. So we decided that we were going to have to move from that place. Oh, there's a few things. One is that while we were at Bob's Animasham, we began preaching and book distribution even then. Myself and Mahamantra Prabhu Shanta Maharaj, we would go down to the post office. I don't know what that square is called, but it's where the main post office is downtown Lagos. And that was the primary place we would go for Harinam and for book distribution. Every now and then, to do a change of pace, we would go someplace else. And on one of those occasions, we decided to go to Apapa. And we went to Apapa, and I didn't take my passport with me because I never wanted to lose it. And we were stopped by the police. And the police, of course, they wanted to see my passport to know who I was. So we told them we had to go back to our place. So Mahamantra was saying they want a bribe. They're not interested in who you are, they want money. So we didn't have money. We weren't going to give them the Sankirtan money. So we went all the way back to the flat at Bob's Animasham, and Brahmananda Prabhu gave them a couple of books, and he put some naira inside the books. And Shanta Maharaj was not appreciative of it. He didn't want to do it. And for some days, he was a little sad about that, a little sulky about that. He didn't want to do it. He said they shouldn't get it. But anyways, so we averted that, and we were going out preaching every day from there. One amazing preaching thing that did happen from Bob's Animasham is, one, I had to learn how to drive a stick shift because I didn't know how to drive a stick shift. So I would practice going back and forth to Shanta Maharaj's house. He lived down the block from us. So I would just drive in one gear all the way down to the inn and back to practice. And eventually we started going out alone, and Tahiro would take Brahmananda for preaching, and sometimes Bhutta Bhavan would come with me and Shanta Maharaj, and we would get into Daihatsu, and I would drive in 1 or 2 gears all the way downtown Lagos until I got the hang of it and everything. And on one occasion, once we had expanded out and we were starting to do more book distribution, before I left America, myself and another devotee who eventually came in 1981, Srinath Prabhu, we used to sell sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. We would simply go house to house and sell sets of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I thought about how can we do this here in Nigeria. So at that time, I would drive around and go house to house, and it was okay, but every time you go to a house, it would take so long after you talk to one person and so forth. So once I drove to Victoria Island, and I got to Victoria Island, and I saw this like really fancy apartment and so many fancy cars and everything. So I thought this would be a good place because everybody's in one apartment complex. But the gate was locked. So only when a car would come through with a pass would the gate open. So I waited for one car to go through, and then I just drove through after that car and parked there. So the gentleman who got out of the car, he went to one apartment, and I just kind of followed him, saw where he went. And then I grabbed a set of Bhagavatams out of the truck, and I went and I knocked on the door, and he opened it, and he mentioned that, what is it that you'd like? And I told him that we're selling sets of life spiritual encyclopedias. They give all the meanings of life. They will help you in your career. They'll help you to guide your life. So he said, all right, come in. So he looked at the Bhagavatams. He said, okay, I'll take a set. Then he told me, also my colleague from my constituency is here. I'll give you his apartment number. I want you to go. I want him to get a set as well. So when I heard the word constituency, I realized that this was the place where all of the parliamentarians and politicians lived when they were in Lagos. So then I thought, oh, wow, this is amazing. So then I started to go first to that constituent member. He bought a set of books. Then I got their names on a list because I only had 3 or 4 sets in the car. So then I took a few of the books and I started taking orders. So every apartment door that I knocked on, I would show the list of who bought it already, then that person would buy it. So in this way, I would take the orders and I would go back and forth, each day from the temple and take and fulfill the orders. So it was like just the most amazing book distributing experience. The only drawback, my wife is calling from the couch to tell the story. Of course, in Nigeria, like in India, people always offer you hospitality when you go to see them. So when I went, everybody would offer, would you like something to eat or would you like something to drink? So, obviously I was very leery about taking food any place. So I said, I'll take some water. They said, no, you have to take something. So the first gentleman, he told me, listen, we have a custom in Nigeria. We have this cola nut. So he brought the cola nut out and he broke a piece off everything. He said, you could take a piece of this. So I thought it was a fruit. So I said, okay. So I took a piece of the cola nut and everything. And I said, okay, this is fine. So then I made the plan that each place I went, I would just take a small piece of cola nut and some juice or water. So each apartment that I knocked on, I took a piece of that cola nut. And I realized like about halfway through going from apartment that I was getting really, very hyped up and everything. And I found myself running up and down the stairs and everything. And so anyways, when I got back to the flat, I was talking to Brahmananda and I was talking so fast. And Brahmananda said, what's wrong with you? I said, no, the book distribution is really great. Everything is going really, this is amazing. We'll be able to sell so many books. He said, calm down. What's wrong with you? So I said, no, everything is okay. So I said, I met so many nice people. I was preaching. Everything was wonderful. He said, did you eat anything? I said, no. Of course I wouldn't eat at anybody's house. I just took a little piece of the cola nut and some fruit like that. And he said, the cola nut it's like pan or beetle in India. So he said, you can't take that. It's like a stimulant. So of course I realized I had a headache and everything the next day. So I realized that was not possible. But anyway, I was very excited that we were distributing so many books and everything. After some time, we had to actually leave the flat, as I mentioned earlier. And on the day we were leaving, one Indian doctor and his daughter, who was also a doctor, came and she had heard about our plight. They were actually from South India, I believe. And they mentioned that they had acquired a clinic and that the clinic was actually too big for their use. So this is Chandrasekhar Prabhu told yesterday to be Koko Road in the Lupeju. So we went to see it, and when we saw it, we thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. We just looked at the first floor. There was a second floor, but we didn't look at it at the time because it was only, myself, Brahmananda, Bhakta Martin Shanta Maharaj, Bhuttabhav, and Prabhu. Hari Maharaj had also been there, so he also came. So we thought this is really excellent. There will be rooms. There's a big room for a temple. So we actually packed up and we moved at that time to Ilupeju. And so we cleaned everything. We organized everything. I think we only had pictures, obviously, for the altar at that time with the promise that Brahmananda was going to go to India, get deities and so forth. So we began our preaching there from Ilupeju. In Babzani Masham, Chandrasekhar Prabhu used to come with his motorcycle, and Shruti and his wife used to come. So those were pretty much the devotees who came to Babzani Masham. Ishwara Prabhu had already known about Bhakti. He had books he told earlier. So, but as he mentioned yesterday, when he started to come to Ilupeju, he was among the first really solid devotees who we thought, okay, he could move in, he'll live here. Himself and Omkar. So they moved in. Shruti never moved in. I guess because he had family, everything, he never moved in or anything. And because of his job, everything, he didn't shave up or anything. But Ishwara and Omkara, they moved in at that time. And then later on, the other devotees you saw in the picture, they moved in. Later in 1980, the latter part of 1980, many of these devotees had moved in the temple, and Hari Murari had returned to America. That was a whole story in itself. I'm not telling that story. But then in 1981, I didn't realize I'd been in Africa that long before the next wave of devotees came, which were obviously Vajralila Mataji, Parameshwari, and Srinath Prabhu. So they came. Now the thing was that now that we had the Grahasta couples there, we had to find a facility because the downstairs rooms were the Brahmacharis, Bhakta Johnson, he was running the store, which was also downstairs. So this is the first time now we're going to really venture upstairs to check it out. What's the viability of living up here? Of course, when we went upstairs and looked closely, it was obviously very dirty. It had not been cleaned. But also, we walked into the rooms. I think Brajalila will tell tomorrow as well. And we saw that there was blood on the walls and stuff. So then we realized that that place had also been used as an abortion clinic. So we all went downstairs and we spoke to Brahmananda that, we don't think that's going to be possible to stay up there. There was no room downstairs, but what will we do? Because we can't stay up here. It's like, just the vibration, the atmosphere, all these things. So he suggested first to do a maha cleaning. So all the devotees chipped in. Ishwar was there as well, I believe, at that time. And we all did a maha cleanup of that place upstairs. And then he said we should, burn incense, chanting the Shringadev prayers, and do Harinam, not only upstairs, but around the whole building. So we did that, and we felt a little more comfortable. And then we took occupancy of 2 of the rooms upstairs for the 2 Grasta couples. And in this way, everything began to show. So you can put up some of the pictures now that I was able to find. And they were from one magazine that I still had a copy of called the Beacon Magazine. And this Beacon Magazine was published by this guy who later tried to take over the temple, who was Isaac Mba. He was the one who published that magazine. And I had written some articles for the magazine along with some other devotees. And so I found all of these pictures in there. So this was the passport picture, and that's how I knew I went to Africa in October of '79. You can go on, Prabhu. This is a picture in the Lagos temple room after we had gotten the preaching going. And you can see Ishwara Prabhu playing Madanga to the left, and then I was giving a class. It could have been a Sunday program because, normally we would get a nice crowd for the Sunday program. So this is at that Sunday program. I was sitting giving class, and this is Ishwara Prabhu playing Madanga. The next one, Prabhuji. This was Mr. Akpan, his name was. He worked for Nigeria Airways, and he lived in Festac Village. And he became a life member and a friend of Krishna, just a really nice family. So we would go to their house and we would do preaching programs. So it was it was a little bit of a drive. And I remember sometimes we would stay there late and have to drive back on Ikororo Road. And Ikororo Road was like so dangerous, you know? But I remember seeing many accidents there and so forth and so on. But they were a wonderful family. And later on, he was sent to Liberia by Nigerian Airways because he worked for Nigerian Airways. And when I went to scout out the possibility of opening a temple in Liberia, I stayed with him there. The next one. This is again part of the temple room there in Ilupeju and the crowd that would come from the preaching. The next one. Yeah, there was. You can see Rajalina. That's Rajalina. I didn't even see that. Go back one. Wow, I didn't see that yesterday when I was looking in the magazine. Go back one, Prabhu. That's Rajalila sitting in the back. There was that one Indian lady. I think that's Rajalila maybe. Sitting in the back there. And there were so many devotees, you know, who came. There's some devotees sitting, and a lot of these are guests, and some are devotees. The next one. And that's Shanta Maharaj, his Mahamantra. He was like one of the main people who would cook. He was an extremely good cook, even at that time. And so that's him in the kitchen there cooking, perhaps for Sunday feast. Next one.
He's still a good cook, I should say.
Still a very good cook.
Yes, yes.
And this is Omkara and him in the kitchen together. And then this is the earlier days in Ilupeju. So Bhuta Bhavan Prabhu was there, and Gopal came at that time also. I don't know if he was initiated by this time, but he was there. And of course, that's Mahamantra or Shanta Maharaj sitting in the middle. But that was the earlier days in Ilupeju. We were taking prasad at that time. This was part of the Books for Africa program, and this was Brahmananda Swami. You can't see the list, but these were all the libraries. There was like so many of them that we gave sets of Bhagavatam to. So that was another big part of the preaching, that we would distribute these books to libraries all over Nigeria. And so that's just a small list, but the list was huge on that page. The next one. Scroll up a little bit. So this was the article that I wrote for the Beacon magazine. It was about the similarities between Vedic culture and the culture of Nigeria. So as I mentioned, prior to coming to Nigeria, I had studied a lot about the African culture and about the African diaspora, and had become, because of playing drums, had become very involved in the culture, in particular, that came from Yoruba culture. So Ifa and the worship of the Orisha and all these things. I knew about all these things from being involved in drumming in America. So when I came to Nigeria, I had a lot of insight on both things. And so I wrote this article for the Beacon magazine at that time. So this was in 1981, because we're about to leave to go to Ghana from here. I think there's one more picture with Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj.
Yeah, Prabhu, I must say you were very charming then. Of course, you were still amazing, but you were very, very charming. Wow.
So this is the first devotees who had come. And this is Vyapi and Aniha. So this was the book distribution, but this was also, I spoke to them this morning, this was also in 1979. One more picture there. And this is at Babzani Masham. This is outside. This was the bedroom I also stayed in. Outside of there was a balcony that just overlooked some land and stuff. And down under us was the guards who used to guard the building. So this is Vyapi and Aniha and Brahmananda when they first arrived in that flat. Then there's one picture of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, which is, and of course, this is the picture. This is the latter part of 1981, because myself and Braja Leela were about to leave to go to Ghana.
Yeah.
So this is the latter part of 1981. And I'll talk a little about Ghana, and then I will let SRIVAS Prabhu take over. But can you show the picture of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj? I think that might be the first picture there. Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a picture. It's not in West Africa. This is actually at the presidential palace in Zambia.
Oh.
And this was the visit we had with Kenneth Kaunda. But I
Yeah.
put this picture in because for me, it was extremely symbolic, because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I won't tell the story of what's happening here. Actually, when he was speaking to the president was so enamored with Maharaj that, Maharaj wouldn't let him go. So we were there for dinner, then like an hour passed, then like another hour passed. And Maharaj kept saying, we really appreciate you having us, and we want to thank you very much. And then the president would find something else to talk about. So this kept going on and on. So now he was showing us his garden. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, I'm smiling because he's pointing to something like he's looking at it, but he was whispering to me and he was telling me, we may be here all night. So I was trying not to laugh. I was just smiling, but he was pointing, but he was saying, yeah, we may be here all night and so forth. So, and also I've made it because it's very symbolic, because Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was the one who actually pointed the way. Many devotees contributed, but he pointed the way to opening West Africa. He was the one who had the dream of the prophecy from Srila Prabhupada and sent the devotees there and organized for devotees come, and came himself very many times, even when there were difficult times. So we're all indebted also to his dedication to Srila Prabhupada to make sure that the mission of Mahaprabhu would reach to West Africa. So from here, I'll make it short because I'm sure Shanta Maharaj will tell the majority of this, and Braja Leela also. But we left with one devotee named Lakshmipati Prabhu, and we left and we went to Ghana. We went by road to Ghana. We didn't take any vehicle. We went by a taxi. And we went through Benin and Togo. And I remember looking at Togo and thinking that Lomé was such a beautiful place. And I remember thinking that one day I'll get to go back there, perhaps, and do some preaching. But of course, Varaha Prabhu ended up doing amazing work there in Togo. And we went on to Ghana. And the first night in Ghana, we did not have a place to stay. So we stayed in one hotel, and we took our dinner at the restaurant that was owned by one Life member. It was called the Raj or something like that. That was the name of the restaurant. And when I was in the restaurant, I saw a friend that I knew from America who was a musician, and he belonged to a very famous group from Ghana called Osibisa. And I saw him in the restaurant, and we talking, what are you doing here? So I told him we're here, we're doing preaching and so forth, so on. So, I would meet up with him again later on. But the next night, we were picked up by Shanta Maharaj. And I do have to mention something because he may not mention it out of humility. But Maharaj had worked a job in Nigeria and it saved money. And part of that money, like many people that come to Nigeria, was for his family, his mother and his family in Ghana. But he took that money and he rented a building in Alajo. And so when the next night we went to that building there, and he had used the money to rent that building out. So that was the first facility that we had in Ghana. And the earlier devotees there were Ganadas, Bhakti and Elizabeth, first of all. I know Mother Marja Leela remembers her because she stayed in the place in Alajo with us. Then Ganadas came, Ekachakra, and then Jiva Goswami. And then, of course, later on we would meet Srivas Prabhu and Shukadev, who were great devotees. And I'm really, really happy because now I'm seeing the fruit that from these devotees like Srivas Prabhu. Unfortunately, Shukadev Prabhu has left the body, but Srivas has carried the mantle and has established such an amazing, amazing thing in West Africa. You understand? So I'm really, really happy, really, really proud. I will pray that very open-heartedly that he will embrace, especially devotees like Shanta Maharaj, who came there, because so much love and affection. I'm telling, when we first met you, Prabhuji, you and Shukadev Goswami came, you and Shukadev Prabhu came to stay in the temple. And I don't know if you remember, you were both still in school. You were both still going to school at that time, maybe college. And Shanta Maharaj was I was the temple president, and he was not telling me, but he was taking money and giving to you guys so that every day would be a little easier for transport and food and things like that. So he told me later on, of course, and so forth. But yeah, such a loving, wonderful grouping that we had there. I will say the experience in Ghana for me was amazing. Both preaching in Nigeria, but Ghana was very amazing. And we stayed there until, I believe Rajali will tell more, till about 1983, maybe end of 83. And then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had us go to Central Africa. That's a whole different story. We ended up with some West African devotees there, like Ishvara and others, but I'll let Maharaj and I'll let Srivas continue from here. My Dandavat Pranam to all devotees. Hare Krishna, Hare yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Your Grace.
Yes.
No problem.
My
Thank
wife
you.
is mentioning one thing I forgot to mention. That's
Yes,
that
please, go ahead.
we had written to many people to do the initiations and so forth in Africa, and we were turned down by many people. Jai Tirtha, Bhagavan, we wrote to even Bhavananda, and I think we had written to a number of people. And then Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj suggested that because we had taken initiation from Kirtanananda, because I had not taken from Srila Prabhupada because of the circumstances I described. So he suggested we write and ask him, even though he's busy in New Vrindavan, he may come. So ultimately he agreed. And I think Srivas Prabhu will tell more about that. So he came and he was the guru for most of the devotees in Nigeria and Ghana, the first waves of devotees there. Of course, later on, after the difficulties of New Vrindavan and everything, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was able to take up, Srivas Prabhu mentioned, he was Srivatsa. And then Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj came and gave true initiation to many of those devotees there at that time. Jai, my Dandavat Pranam, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing these wonderful pastimes. It is slightly unfortunate that your video couldn't favor us, but the audio is sufficient enough. I would like to share this briefly on His Grace Mukunda Prabhu, EKENDRA Prabhu. Prabhuji shared a little bit of himself when he started speaking, but I would like to read a little bit more on who this amazing soul is. So Prabhuji attended the Brooklyn Iskcon Temple in 1972. I was speaking to one devotee who spoke on our platform sometime last week that there was like magic happening in 1972. So many amazing devotees came in contact with Iskcon. So Prabhuji came in contact with the Brooklyn Temple in 1972. He maintained an interest in the study of Bhakti Yoga that led him, I'm reading, that's why my head is turned this way, I'm sorry, of Bhakti Yoga. That led him to join the Iskcon ashram in Los Angeles, LA, in 1975 during a break from college. After returning to college and spending time as a professional musician, which he shared with us, Mukunda Das returned to service in the ashram full-time in 1979 and was then sent to start temples in Africa, where he preached until 1987. So this 1987 was not exactly in West Africa, but in South Africa, Central Africa. After returning to the US, he helped to start an outreach preaching center called the Institute for Applied Spiritual Technology, which had great success. The single most important event for Mukunda Das was meeting Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj in 1996 after having heard and read his books. So in 1997, Mukunda Prabhu took initiation from Sri Narayan Maharaj and began to help in the development of Washington, D.C. preaching after retiring from work as a police officer. Well, next time I get pulled over, I might have to give you a call. So Mukunda Prabhu moved to Alachua, Florida, where he is helping with various projects and preaching. We say Mukunda because that is his name at the moment. But one thing, very important thing that is not mentioned in this write-up is that Prabhuji formerly EKENDRA PRABHU, has made wonderful progress, and his progress has been recognized. So as we speak, Prabhuji is an initiating guru in the Gaudiya math. We can't thank you enough, Prabhuji, for help start the movement in West Africa for some of us to benefit and be here, have the opportunity to attempt to serve as devotees. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. And then we'll go to His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari. Well, I do not need any book to read on SRIVAS Vanachari because he's my mentor. He trained me. Many things I know in devotional service were all taught by His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari to me. I am not in Ghana as I speak, but I understand His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari does not chastise as much. But I remember when I was studying under him, he used to chastise a lot, and most of us were very much scared of him. But those chastisements were for our own good. And I remember one time all the devotees from West Coast had gathered in Ghana, Accra, and during Bangarati, after the Pujari had finished offering the ghee, I went to pick the ghee to offer to Prabhupada and then offer to the devotees. And I mistakenly, after offering the ghee to Srila Prabhupada, I first offered the ghee to His Holiness B.D.D. Maharaj, who was then Parikshit. And right there, His Grace SRIVAS came and then he says, "Come here! Don't you know the etiquette? Don't you know Parampara? Get Omkara!" I'm sorry, I'm getting elated. So, His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari, please, the floor is yours. You may unmute and you may go ahead and speak. Thank you for your service. Hare Krishna.
Gyanatamridasya Gyanan Gyanasalakaya Chapshuramalitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapradantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrayatam Sahaguna Ragunastambitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Radham Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakambitam Scha Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Samiti Namine Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Ashri Tatmane Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Titri Iti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Samiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvase Sashunyavadi Pasachade Satarini Vanchakalpatarvyascha Kripasandubhyaivacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangam lagayate grim yat kripatamahan vande Shri Gurudina Taranam Paramanam Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Akanda mandalakaram vyaptaina chara charam tatpadam dasitam yena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So thank you very much, dear devotees, for arranging this wonderful meeting whereby we can react the history of Iskcon West Africa. It is very exciting and very wonderful to meet all these great saints who have contributed in diverse ways to establish the movement that we now have today in West Africa. According to the rules, I have to say something about my previous life before I go on to speak about how I got involved with the movement. I can say from childhood, I had an interest. I had two things in my mind. I had two professions that I liked. I liked to be a priest or a doctor. These were the two things that were very prominent in my life when I was a child. So even though I came from an African traditional home, but I attended a Catholic school. And from the beginning, we were introduced to Christianity, and eventually I got baptized in the Catholic Church. So whatever I learned in the church, whatever I saw and witnessed the priest doing, when I would go home, I would gather all the children in the village and I would imitate what the priests were doing in the church. So I used to gather some wild fruits and I would light them and offer them to the children as Holy Communion, Eucharist. So in fact, in my village, in the area I come from, all the elders, they did not even know my name. The name they all gave me was Father, that is Reverend Father. That is how many of the elders in the village knew me. So I was interested in becoming a Reverend Father. Then when I went to secondary school and then to the sixth form, my desire was to become a medical doctor. So, but when I completed sixth form, my grades were not strong enough to get me into the medical school. I was given chemistry in the University of Cape Coast in 1978. But I felt if I cannot do medicine, let me become a priest. So I did not go for the course in chemistry. I decided to apply to the seminary. It took a year to go through the preliminaries, the whatever requirements were needed. But eventually, my bishop approved my seminary. So I was admitted to the what do you call it? I think St. Victor's Major Seminary in Tamale. I was admitted in 79, the 79 batch. But Krishna did not want me to go there. Something mysterious happened. When I boarded the state transport from Wa to Tamale, I sat on the same seat with an uncle I've never known, I've never met him. I only heard of his name, but I've never met him in person. I don't know him by face. But Krishna arranged that I bought the ticket right after him. And so he was sitting to the window and I was sitting on the aisle seat. So when the transport pulled out of the station, he looked at me, and I have a semblance of my father. So he asked me, where do I come from? And I mentioned my village. He asked me who's my father. I mentioned my father's name. Then he mentioned his name also. And he said, do I know that? I said, yes, he's my granduncle. Then he said, I'm your uncle also. Then the conversation began. Then he asked me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Tamale. To do what? I said, I'm going to St. Victor's Major Seminary. He said, you want to be a priest? I said, yes. He said, no. I said, why? And he gave his reasons. He had served the Catholic bishop for many years as a cook. And he has seen the life many of them were leading wasn't perfect. And so he did not want me to join that group of people. So he was very strong about it. So from Wa to Tamale, we debated, we argued. Finally, we got to Tamale in the evening, and he said, look, young boy, come and stay with me for 2 days. Let us finalize this thing. And I went with him, and he convinced me not to go to the seminary. So then I said, what to do next? He said, go to the university, go to college, do some course. After you graduate, if you are still interested in becoming a priest, I will allow you. But at this stage, you are still too young. Your mind is too young, immature to become a priest. So then I applied to go to the School of Medical Technology because I felt I could still do my medicine after graduating from the School of Medical Technology. So I got admission, and then I started attending this school. But I also had some experiences. An uncle of mine died, and at the time he died, he was a police officer. He died in an accident. I saw his ghost in the house, his spirit in the house. Nobody else saw him. I was seeing him, but he was not communicating with anybody. So after he left, I asked my father, why is it that uncle came here, he did not greet anybody, he didn't talk to anybody? And my father was surprised that I was talking about this police officer. So he said, you saw the police officer? I said, yes. He said, if you saw the police officer, it means there is a problem. But let us wait and see. The next morning, the police jeep arrived with the corpse of this uncle. Now he had an accident. He was on duty, he had an accident, and he died on the spot. 10 o'clock in the morning, the day before, that was when I saw his form, his ghost, his spirit in the house. So that was the beginning of my spiritual journey, actually. From that moment, I understood that life does not end with death. Because here is the case, my uncle, the policeman, had died. And I still saw him moving around. So from that moment, I had a strong desire to find out what happens after death. So when I entered college at Kolebu, I had a lot of interest in yoga. There was Ananda Marga temple just not too far away from our hostel. And so from time to time, I used to go there and sit down and do some meditation. Then I also got attracted to EKENDRA. EKENDRA was very strong in the early 80s in Ghana. They had a very big following. They had captured many lecturers and professors in the universities, and they had a very strong following. So as students, we were also interested in that philosophy. It was there I met EKENDRA PRABHU now MUKUNDA, Prabhu. I think Ekechakra Prabhu and probably Gyanadas Prabhu. There were three of them. They came to attend the Ekankar seminar at the ATTC, Accra Technical Training Center at Kokomlemile. This was somewhere around April 1981. They just come to Ghana, and as Mukunda Prabhu mentioned, they were staying at Alajo. When we met them at this place. And how do we recognize them? There was this big lecture. It was a West African event. People from Nigeria came, people from Senegal, people from Togo, from Liberia, from Cote d'Ivoire. They all gathered in Ghana to attend the Ekankar seminar. And then the leader, he described the different spiritual levels, the mind plane, the soul plane, and all the different planes. And then he mentioned that when you enter the soul plane, because every plane has its own music, when you enter the soul plane, you will hear the flute music. And when you hear that flute music, it is so sweet that you don't want to come back to this world. It was then and there, EKENDRA Prabhu, now Mukunda Prabhu, raised his hand and stood up. And he asked the speaker a question. He said, Mr. Speaker, you described the spiritual journey to the spiritual world very elaborately, very nicely. And you mentioned that in the spiritual sky, you hear the flute of God. So he said, who is blowing that flute? Who is responsible for that flute? And the speaker, they are impersonalists. Actually, Ekankar, they are impersonalists. They don't believe in the personal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They believe in the Brahman Jyoti. So he said that there is no personality behind. It is just the music of that plane. So then EKENDRA Prabhu disagreed with him. He said that the person blowing the flute is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is responsible for that flute music. Then he went on to say that because they have no bhakti, they have no devotion, they could only hear the sound, but they could not see the personality. So all along, we have been accepting Ekankar as the best philosophy, as the highest philosophy. But that moment, when EKENDRA Prabhu spoke, Mukunda Prabhu spoke, we realized that there was something beyond Ekankar. In fact, we were about 10 students in that meeting from our school who were all following the Ekist way of meditation. So when we closed the meeting, then we came out of the hall, and then we saw the white van, Hare Krishna book mobile, and there were a lot of Srila Prabhupada's books displayed. So we immediately approached the bus, and then the devotees, Mukunda Prabhu, Gyanadas Prabhu, and I think Ekechakra Prabhu, they started preaching to us. All of us, 10 students, we all went to the bus and they started explaining things to us. And then I bought the Science of Self-Realization, and other students bought other books. And then we asked where they were, and they said they were at Alajo. But that place wasn't conducive for their purpose, for their preaching. So they had secured another building at Odoko, official town. And so, but they were still negotiating and making the necessary payments. So, but if we were to come that weekend, we would meet them at Alajo. But if we are going to come another time, not that weekend, then they might have left Alajo. They will be at Odoko official town in front of the official town market. So that is the information we got. So I didn't go to the temple. I didn't go to the Alajo temple. I never went there. But later on, we went to the Odoko official town temple. Actually, Sukade Goswami, Sukade Prabhu, he was also part of the team who met them at the ATTC. He was the first to trace them to the Odoko official town. And then he came back to the school and he told me how it was so wonderful to go to the temple. They have lecture, they have kirtan, they have prashadam. It was a very sweet experience. I said, okay, following week, I will go with you. So the following week, we went to the temple together. I must say that Mukunda Prabhu and Ranjanila Mataji, they were so wonderful because Mukunda Prabhu was the temple president and Ranjanila Mataji was the senior mother in the temple. And they were all welcoming and very sweet and very wonderful. Also, Shanta Maharaj, then Mahamatra Prabhu, he was also very encouraging, very inspiring, and he was showing a lot of care and love to the new devotees who were coming. He would preach to them one by one. He would explain certain things concerning the philosophy one by one to each of us. And so we got bonded to the devotees in the temple. And so every week, every Sunday, we would go. And I remember very, very clearly the Mukunda Prabhu, he had the temple van. He would always drop us at the school. Every Sunday when we came for the Sunday program, Mukunda Prabhu would make sure that he dropped us at the school. And he kept encouraging us to come back and forth. So in Sukade Goswami, he first moved to the temple. I was still attending my courses because I was at that time also pursuing a scholarship program to the Soviet Union. And there was an advert, and then for those who wanted to study in the Soviet Union, if you had A levels or you have a diploma in any course or some qualification, you could apply. So I had applied to the University of Moscow to study medicine, and I was actually selected. So at that time, I was thinking, better I just go to Moscow and study my medicine and come back. So Vishnudev was more into the temple. But Krishna had his plan. So because of the scholarship secretariat issued passports to those of us who had gotten admission to go to Russia to study. So I was given a passport. Those days, it wasn't a common thing to have a passport unless you were to go on a government assignment or a scholarship or something like that. You could not easily get a passport because you had to go through a government organization. So it was a scholarship secretariat that applied for our passports and finally delivered them to us. So at that time, then I was coming to the temple from time to time. Then one day when I came, they said it was time for Balaram's appearance day. It was a week to Balaram's appearance day. So EKENDRA Prabhu, Mukunda Prabhu, he was organizing a traveling party to Kumasi so they were going to raise funds for the program, for the fees, Balaram fees. And so I came, and EKENDRA Prabhu talked to me that, why don't you join us? What are you doing at the school? Join us to go to Kumasi. I was a bit reluctant, but I just felt, okay, let me also try this. So I joined them to Kumasi. And then we spent about a week in Kumasi doing Sankirtan. We stayed at the city hotel at that time. The men in one room, women in another room. We stayed in Kumasi. And I wasn't very conversant with the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, though I was reading, but I was not very deep in it. But in Kumasi, we were dropped at different places. And then I was dropped at Kejetia. And then where the students from UST were, that was when they are coming to town, that's where they would drop. And many of my mates who were in UST at that time, and I was in dhoti, because to do Sankirtan, you must dress like a priest. So I was in dhoti, I was in tilak, and though I wasn't shaved. But so when the students, they were dropping, some of the students who were my mates, they saw me in that dress. And some of them were very curious. They came. Hey, Sylvester, what's wrong with you? What went wrong? Why are you dressed like this? And I used the opportunity to preach. And so I sold a lot of books to some of my friends, my classmates, and many students who were dropping at the KJT. I stayed there for a whole week. Every day, MUKUNDA PRABHU would drop me there. Everybody had his own spot at different parts of Kumasi. So it was so nice to distribute books. Then we came back. We had a celebration of Balaram Appearance Day, followed by Janmashtami. Then I went back to school. And then I think around that time, Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu and his wife also arrived in Ghana. And he became the Sankirtan leader. So anytime I would come to the temple, Sikhi Mahiti will talk to me, come with me on Sankirtan. A few times we went to Tema on Sankirtan, a few times we went to different places on Sankirtan. And then finally, there was a need to bring books from Nigeria, because those days the Nigerian economy was very good, it was strong, the currency was strong, and so everything, and in Ghana, it was the opposite. In Ghana, things were very bad, the economy was very bad, you had to queue for sugar, you had to queue for milk, you had to queue for every essential commodity. There was a lot of hoarding going on. So, Sikhi Mahiti was the Sankirtan leader, and he was to go to Nigeria to bring books and some essential commodities. So they were looking for a devotee who could go with them. And they wanted a devotee who had an official traveling document. And I think at that time, nobody had. So, and somehow they asked me, and I said, yes, I had a passport. I got his passport from the scholarship secretariat because of the scholarship I've got. And they said, okay, why don't you go with the with Sikhi Mahiti, accompany him to Lagos so that you bring the books. It would just take 1 week or a maximum 2 weeks. That is how I follow Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu, the driver, and myself, 3 of us. We drove from Accra to Lagos. When we got to Lagos, it was decided that we should do Sankirtan to raise money to buy essential commodities for the temple in Ghana, because they were not in the market. Essential commodities were in the market. So we couldn't go to Nigeria and come back with nothing. So therefore, we were to do Sankirtan and buy commodities for the temple. So that was when Ishwara Prabhu joined our party, because we needed a local devotee who understood the terrain in Nigeria to go with us. So Ishwara Prabhu was selected to join our team. So Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu, Ishwara Prabhu, by then he was Ishmael, Bhakta Sylvester. No one was initiated at that time. But we travel all day, and by evening, we arrive at Ilorin. From morning to evening, we're traveling, and we only got to Ilorin in the evening. And when we asked the journey from Ilorin to Kano or to Kaduna or to Jos, and they said we needed to travel another full day. Then Sikhi Mahiti said, well, we cannot go on this journey. Better we come back south and find some other places to preach. So we spent the night at Ilorin, at the police station, in the vehicle, and the next morning, we came back to Ibadan. We stayed in Ibadan and we did Sankirtan for a day or two, but the results weren't so good. So then Ishwara Prabhu suggested, let's go to the east. So from Ibadan, we went to Benin, but we didn't stop in Benin. We continued. He suggested we go to Port Harcourt. So we went to Port Harcourt, and it was amazing. The people were so receptive. In fact, I always remember that whatever book distribution, whatever Krishna consciousness, initial Krishna consciousness that I was inspired to practice, it came from Port Harcourt because the people were so receptive. Military officers, police officers, custom officers, all kinds of people were buying Prabhupada's books in sets. In those days, we don't sell one book. We sell in set. You have one Bhagavad Gita, you have teachings on Lord Kapila, teachings on Lord Chaitanya, we have sixth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have Science of Civilization, Coming Back, Beyond Birth and Death, Easy Journey to Other Planets. We were selling the books in sets. And people were buying in sets. So Ishwara Prabhu, Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu, and myself and the driver from Ghana, we were the people on the Sankirtan in Port Harcourt. There was no way to stay. We didn't know anybody in Port Harcourt. So we were sleeping at the police station. In the evening, we'll go to the police. In fact, the first day we went to the police and we explained to them, we are missionaries, we are preaching, we are distributing books. And so if they will allow us, we just sleep in our vans in their premises so that we can have some protection. And they said, well, since we are not going to provide accommodation for you, you can stay in your bus. So we nicknamed that place Hotel de Police, because every day for the whole period that we're distributing books in Port Harcourt, we were staying at that police station. In fact, we also gave books to the police officers. And we began to preach to them. Sikhi in particular, he was very eager to preach to the officers. And then in a very short time, all the officers had books of Prabhupada, and they were so nice, they were so sweet. They would greet us, they would ask us how we are doing, how is the preaching, and so on. And as Ishwara Prabhu mentioned yesterday, we had no food. Our only food was banana, granite, sometimes bread, and yogurt. We would just buy from the supermarket. The whole time we stay, we never but it was so ecstatic because people were taking the books in their sets. So we did Sankirtan there for about 2 weeks. And then the books were getting finished. So on the last day, Sikhi Mahiti went to call Lagos to see whether they could send some more books or there could be some arrangement. But when he called Lagos, he was told that that evening, Bhakti Tita Maharaj was arriving. So he came back and broke the news to us. He says, Prabhus, there is good news from Lagos. So what is the good news? Bhakti Tita Maharaj is arriving from the US in Lagos that evening. So he said, let us finish all the rest of the books we have now, and then we have to go to Lagos tonight. We must participate in the first kirtan of Bhakti Tita Maharaj. That was the first time I was going to meet him. I've been hearing about him. Devotees have talked about him in Ghana. Devotees have talked about him in Nigeria, but I've never met him before. So when we heard that Bhakti Tita Maharaj was arriving on that day, there was a great excitement to meet the Black Swami. So when we got that news, we quickly tried as much as possible to dispose of all the books that were left in the van, and actually we did. And then we jumped into the van. We were ready to go to Lagos. It was evening. And so by the time we got to Benin, it was already 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, thereabout. And those days, there was a lot of armed robbery on the Benin Lagos highway. So at night, the police will stop all the cars, and then sometimes they would give one police car to follow them throughout the journey to make sure that they're not robbed. If there is no such police vehicle available to follow them, then they will stop all the vehicles. You have to stay at the barrier until the next morning before they will allow you to go. So when we got there, around 9 o'clock thereabouts, the officer says they will not allow us to pass. We have to stay at the barrier till the next morning. But we were so eager to go to Lagos because we did not want to miss Bhakti Tito Maharaj's first kirtan in Lagos. So we insisted. We all got down from the bus. We went to the police officer, Sikhi Mahiti, Ishwara Prabhu, myself. We went to the police officer said, look, we've got information that there are armed robbers on the highway, and therefore we will not allow any vehicle to pass. But we did not listen to that. We insisted. We told him, look, our spiritual leader is arriving and we must go. After a lot of persistence and perseverance, finally the officer yielded. He said, all right, my duty is to protect you. But if you want to give yourself up to the armed robbers, when they kill all of you, we will only come and pack your dead bodies. By then it will be too late. But now we can still protect you. But if you want to go, if you're insisting you want to go, we have no objection, you can go. But we have done our part. So they opened the gate and we drove in. So we drove all the way to Lagos. Of course, on the way, we saw some people. Ishwara Prabhu was asleep. Sikhi Mahiti was asleep. I was sitting in the front with the driver, so I couldn't sleep. And so in the middle of nowhere, there was a lady stopping the car. And the driver was a bit naive. When he saw the lady in the middle of the night stopping the car, he was slowing down. And I said, why are you slowing down? He said, there's a lady. I said, do you know her? The police have told us there is armed robbers on the road. So anybody who stopped this car never stop. So go on. And he increased the speed, and then we passed them. We didn't stop. And that's how we got to Lagos. We got to Lagos exactly 4:30 a.m. Bhakti Tito Maharaj had already started the kirtan, the Mangalati kirtan in the temple. So we just jumped out of our vehicle and we ran into the temple and we joined the roaring kirtan that Bhakti Tito Maharaj had started. And so that was my first interaction with Bhakti Tito Maharaj in Lagos. Then, Sikhi Mahiti, the next morning, he announced office, and he said, I have been informed that you've got scholarship to go to study medicine in Moscow. Is it true? I said, yes. And so when are you going? I said, well, I'm waiting for directives from the government. Then he said, so you go back to Ghana to pursue your education? I said, well, that is what I'm thinking. Then he said that I would prefer that you become a full-time preacher. I've already received such favorable report from your Sankirtan leader, Sikhi Mahiti Prabhu, that you are so enthusiastic in distribution of Prabhupada's books. So I would suggest that you just join full-time. Forget about your scholarship. And let me tell you, I have preached in the communist bloc, and in those countries, they don't even drink water. They drink vodka. Their water is beer. If you go to the communist bloc and you become a drunkard, and you may not live very long. But if you decide to join Srila Prabhupada's movement and become a full-time preacher, I assure you, you will never regret. But then he said, I am not forcing you. You can decide. You go and think about it and then come back and see me. So I paid my obeisances and I left. I first went to Sikhimaiti, Prabhu, and I said, Prabhu, this is what Maharaj is telling me. He's asking me to forget about my education, my courses, and just become a full-time preacher. What is your opinion? And he said, Bhakti Tita Maharaj is asking you to become a full-time devotee, and you are coming to ask me. If I were you, I will just shave my head, I will cut a sikha, I will wear tilak, I will wear dhoti, and I will go and pay obeisances to Maharaj. He is giving you a very wonderful future, and you should accept it. So I said, thank you. And then I went to the temple president. The temple president at that time was Patamrita Prabhu. So I went to him because we have stayed in Lagos for almost a month or so. So I was always serving him. So I had some rapport with him. So I went to him and I said, Prabhu, Bhakti Tita Maharaj had just called me to his office. And he said he would prefer me to join the temple full-time instead of pursuing my academic goals. What do you think? What is your suggestion? He repeated almost the same message. He said, Bhakti Tita Maharaj has asked you to become a full-time preacher, and you're coming to ask me. If I were you, I would just cut my sikha, but then I wasn't shaved. I would just cut a sikha, I will put on tilak, I will wear a dhoti, and I will go pay obeisances to Maharaj. He said exactly the same. Then I said, thank you. And I went to Umampati. At that time, Umampati was a Bhakta leader in Lagos. So I went to him, and I also had some relationship with him. So I went to him and I said, Prabhu, I have just been invited by Bhakti Tita Maharaj to his office, and he's requesting me to join full-time and forget about my education. What is your take on this? He just embraced me. He just got up and embraced me and said, you are a very fortunate soul for Bhakti Tita Maharaj to personally ask you to join the temple. If I were you, I would immediately shave my head, cut a sikha, put on tilak, wear a dhoti, and go offer obeisances to Bhakti Tita Maharaj. So almost the same message, the same response from these three senior devotees. Earlier on, I had heard that if you want to take an important decision in life, you need to ask three personalities. And if they all say the same thing, it is auspicious, you should go ahead. So when I got these three devotees saying almost the same thing, I felt this request by Bhakti Tita Maharaj is most auspicious. Let me do it. So I went, I got a devotee, he cut a sikha, he shaved my head, I put on tilak, and I wore a dhoti. I went and knocked at Maharaj's door. And he said, yes, who is there? Come in. I opened the door, and he saw me with a shaven head. And he said, Jai. And then I just fell at his feet. And I don't know what I was saying. But Maharaj was so kind. When I fell at his feet, he started to massage my head. He was massaging my head. So I didn't know what to do, whether to get up, whether to remain there, what to do, I don't know. So I was just lying there, and Maharaj was massaging my ugly head with his lotus hands for some time. And then finally he stopped, and I sat up. And I said, Maharaj, I have decided to follow your instructions. Whatever you are telling me, I'm ready to accept. And Maharaj said, Jai. He said, wonderful, great. And then the next morning, he announced that I was going to take over the service of Bhakta Johnson. Bhakta Johnson, he was in a shop. He was a secretary to Brahmananda Swami then. And he was distributing books to bookshops, and he was running the Govinda shop, and he was in charge of the BBT books. But I think things weren't going well. There were some speculations that he was supplying books to some places and he's not reporting. So there was that speculation going on. So when that day I shaved, and then I went to see Maharaj, he didn't tell me anything specific. But the next morning, after Mangalarati, Marai announced that from today, Dr. Sylvester is going to be in charge of the BBT shop. He'll be in charge of the BBT books. Dr. Johnson can do some other services. So that is how I took over the BBT shop and the BBT book room and the position as a secretary to Brahmananda. That's how I took over from him. And Johnson, he left. He never came back. So that is how I got involved in Lagos. So for many years, I served in the capacity of the BBT manager. And then that is how I also got a little bit of that Imba saga. Isaac Imba, he had some Igbo boys, and they really wanted to hijack the movement. He was the chairperson of the trustees, the board of trustees. Imba, Isaac Imba, Mrs. Inochiri, and Mr. Akpa. They were the three members of the trustees for the society, and Imba was the chairperson. So he wanted to take over the whole movement. And there was this Chaitanya Clement, he was Dr. Clement, later he was Chaitanya Das, and then there was another Dr. Felix, and there was another third person. I think there was another Dr. Paul, also from Enugu. So the three of them, they team up with Mr. Imba, and they stole one of the vans from the temple and took many books away, loaded in the van, and they took it to Enugu. So, and we had two vans. One van was left. One van was left. So at that time, Omkara Prabhu was the temple president. So we decided, and at that time, that coup d'etat that Ishwara Prabhu described yesterday had taken place, and all the foreign devotees have left us. There was none with us. So Omkara Prabhu was our senior most person. He was the temple president. So when these things started happening, we decided that we have to, the rest of the devotees, we're going to just come to Ghana because there were a lot of events that were not very favorable. So the other van that was left, we packed some books, and the devotees, all of us, we entered the bus, and we waited that in the evening we will begin to drive, and towards the Badagry border we'll cross and we'll come to Ghana. We're just thinking that's the best option. Not knowing Imba had put somebody around the temple to monitor the activities of the devotees. So when we started moving the bus in the evening with all the devotees inside, they called the police, Ilukwenu police, to arrest that were still in the bus. So they arrested the bus and took all of us to the police station. So we had to call Mr. Patel. Mr. Patel came to the police station, and then he asked the police to release us. But they said they had to detain the bus, they had to detain the books. So they did that. I think around that time, Ishwara Prabhu had gone to London. He had traveled. He had gone to London. And then so we went down, Mr. Patel got us bail from the police station, and he took us to his house and put us in his boys' quarters. And the police impounded the vehicle and the books. The next morning, Mr. Patel went to rent a flat at Anthony towards Oshodi. And there he put all of us there. There were about three bedrooms in the flat. Then they had to buy us a new set of kitchen equipment, gas cookers, and all the other things, and supplied us boga, gave us money to settle down. So we stayed in that Anthony Street for 1 month. And Mr. Patel was taking care of us. Every day they'll bring us boga, they'll bring us whatever we needed. And the only thing we could do was to just read Krishna book. In fact, I can say that moment, that 1 month of reading Krishna book was one of the most happiest moments for all the devotees, because we had nothing else to do. We just get up, we do Mangarati, we chant our rounds, we cook prasad, we offer, we take prasad, and then we just read Krishna book all day and all evening. And every devotee was feeling very, very happy, hearing Krishna book every day. Then after 1 month, then they had gathered all the important personalities. Mrs. Inochiri, who was living in London, came down. Mr. Akpa from Calabar came down. And then Arjuna at that time was a senior officer. He also came with his officers. There was another tall, fair colored guy who was working at the airport. I can't remember his name. He also came. He was a supporter of the Hare Krishna movement. He also came. So there was a meeting of all the trustees and important officers, and it was in that meeting that Mr. Imba was disposed of as the chairperson of the trustees by Mrs. Nochuri, who was a secretary. And then they asked him to join the temple if he wanted, because he wasn't a full-time devotee. If he wanted to join the temple, he should join full-time. And he said he could not do that. So they cut him out. And then they talked to the landlady, and she had agreed to allow us to continue with the worship in that place at 2B Coca Road. It was only then we came back from that place to stay in Coca Road, and then they were able to retrieve the vehicle from the police and the books from the police. And later on, we got the van also in Enugu returned, but the books, we couldn't get them. So that is what happened with Imba. So the preaching, I can say, from that moment on, things began to expand. Initially, there was only one temple in Lagos, but then Shanta Maharaj, he was very instrumental both in Ghana and in Nigeria. As I said, when I went to the temple, he was a source of inspiration for me, because he was always very caring, very, very concerned about the new devotees. So he was always preaching to us and encouraging us. And as Mukunda Prabhu said, even sometimes when we needed some transport as students, he would try to facilitate us. So he came back to Lagos, and then there was a need to start a preaching center in Port Harcourt. There were some Indian live members who wanted to support the preaching in Port Harcourt. So Shanta Maharaj by then was brought, I think he was brought from Ghana to go to Port Harcourt to start the preaching in Port Harcourt. And then later on, there was PRABHU also started doing something in Benin. And then he also got a place rented in Benin. And then he also started preaching in Benin. And then we have something happening in Enugu, something happening in Jos, something happening in Kaduna, something happening in Warri, something happening in Abeokuta, something happening in Ibadan. It was in Ibadan that we had one devotee. His name is Bhavisha Prabhu. Bhavisha Prabhu was a customs area administrator. He was the head of the Oyo State Customs. And so he rented a shop at the Agbowo shopping complex that was just opposite the University of Ibadan. And even though Brahmananda did not want me to leave Lagos, in fact, anytime there was a need to appoint a leader for a new temple, Bhaktivedanta Maharaj will always nominate me. But Brahmananda Swami will not agree, because I was raising a lot of money in the shop. And I was doing a lot of things supporting the president. I was like the vice president to Omkara Prabhu. So Brahmananda felt
Well, Hare Krishna, dear devotees. It seems speaker is having a little bit of issue with his internet, but I believe so far, yeah, internet problem. I believe so far we are really, really enjoying. Well, before Prabhuji comes back, I would also want to remind the devotees that even though we've been here for almost 2 hours now, devotees still have the opportunity to ask questions or follow up with certain events that have been shared. So when Prabhuji is done speaking, devotees may also have the opportunity to do that. If you do have any follow-up, you want to, yeah, thank you. You really want to know more about that. But before Prabhuji comes back, Srimad Mukunda Prabhu, I have this question. I have this question because you were both in Nigeria and Ghana in 1981. I was pretty young then, but I remember 1981 was a very, very harsh and difficult time in Ghana. Why? Because there was a terrible famine, and there was so much hunger all over the country. And we had also had a newly staged coup d'etat. So I am just wondering, how did the devotees survive in such harsh environment or condition? How did things go in 1981 when you were in Ghana?
I can tell Babuji, but I think Srivas was back on. I really liked hearing what he was saying.
Oh,
But maybe after there's a little time, I can tell that period. That was a tough period. But the other
Yeah.
periods were filled with Kiliweli, Kantumbre, everything. So we could tolerate.
all right.
But I'll
all
let
right.
Srivas finish first because it was really nice. His flow
Yes.
and what he's saying. At the end,
Yeah.
I can tell a little bit.
Yeah.
Did
All
he
right.
fix his internet?
He is not back yet.
Oh, all right. Well, at that time, I think
Yeah.
there was a famine, and in part, there was also a petrol shortage.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so it's difficult for trucks
Yes.
to get in and out.
Yeah.
So there's a very nice story about Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj at that time. At that time, we used to formally be able to get so many things. We would go to the market and the Fulani, they would give this wagas, which was like curd. And it's really, really tasty, but like better than curd. And we were able to go to one expat family who made whole wheat bread. And we would go to the factory and get yogurt, fresh yogurt, everything. So, of course, in Ghana, all the meals were exceptional. Like, I mean, really, we had very good cooks. Jamini came at some point, and also we had really good cooks. Roger Little obviously was there. So we had really, really, really good cooking going on in Ghana. But during that time, you couldn't get anything except ground nuts and these small bananas, oranges a little bit. And I remember it was going on for about 2 or 3 months. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj wanted to come. And I spoke to him in Nigeria and told him, Maharaj, it's not a really good time to come now because this thing is going on and, it's very tough. And even the Sankirtan, everything we're doing Harinam, but everything else is slowed down tremendously. So he said, I'll think about it. I'll decide. So we were still going on Harinam and things like that and still trying to distribute some books, everything, but things were really kind of tough. And then one night we were doing Harinam. Normally we do Harinam from the beginning of that Adoko official town market, and we would circle down to the main road and come back. So one night we did that, and when we came back, we would always conclude with the Nasringa prayers from the porch of the Adoko building. So while we were chanting, a taxi pulled up, and then Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj got out of the taxi. So he didn't tell us he was coming. So, but then the kirtan was already going, but then it started ramping up even more. And so long story short, because I think Srivas's internet is back now, we were really in crises because we didn't have so many goods. So myself and Shanta Maharaj, we went and we begged that expat family if we could just get 2 or 3 loaves of bread, because then at least we could make like some toast or something for Maharaj. So the next morning, I remember we did in fact make, the groundnuts and bananas, so forth to the devotees at large. And we made Maharaj a plate with a little bit of vegetable, everything, and some of that bread we had sliced and put some butter, everything. So Maharaj said, oh, well, it's not so bad. I mean, devotees at least can have bread. So I told Maharaj, no, Maharaj, it's like we only have like a couple of loaves, so we're just saving that for your visit. So then Maharaj said, I don't really like bread so much. It's not a big thing. So you should give to the devotees. We started crying there, Prabhu.
Oh.
He said, I don't eat bread so much, anything. So you should give it out to the devotees.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a tough time. But other than that, in Ghana, it was like paradise.
Yeah.
Nigeria was also really good. It was a lot tougher preaching, but in Ghana, the atmosphere, if you have a meal in Ghana, you're talking about kiliwele, kontombe,
Yeah.
right? And then the market across the street, the lady would give us these buffalo,
Yeah. Oh, you still remember all the local names. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Prabhuji, Srivas, your internet is back.
Yes. Yeah, Prabhu
Okay,
Srivas.
good.
So please, you may unmute. You are muted.
Yeah, I think my time is up.
But even though your time is up, you did not round up what you were saying. You taught me that you never end Kirtan abruptly.
That's true.
So I'm reminded you do not end abruptly.
So anyway, I was talking about the preaching in Ibadan, that we had one devotee, his name is Bhavisha Prabhu. He was an area administrator of customs. He was initiated by Bhaktipat, I think in 84 or 83, somewhere about like that. And so then shortly after that, he was transferred to Ibadan as an area administrator. So he had a lot of resources and he was supporting the temple like anything. So that was the only time Brahmananda Prabhu
Let me
This
see.
internet is still off.
Yeah, I think.
Bhavisa was initiated in 82 or so. Actually, I first preached to him, Bhavisha. The area, it was the commission of.
Srivas Prabhu, you are muted. And
Okay.
my apologies. We would like to try this to turn your camera off to see if that might help with the bandwidth.
Okay.
Yeah, so you may go ahead and speak.
Okay, Ishwara Prabhu was saying something.
I think he was saying something.
Bhavisha Prabhu was, I preached to him actually at the end of 81. And he was in the first initiation also. And then when I was going to Zimbabwe.
No, he took initiation in New Vrindavan, he and his wife.
Okay, but anyway, that was 83. But because when I was going to Zimbabwe, he had given me a letter because the ambassador of Nigeria ambassador was his, they were met together. The first ambassador of Nigeria to Zimbabwe. So he had given me a letter to introduce me to the High Commission of Nigeria in Zimbabwe that time.
Okay.
So and, when I was in Harare, Zimbabwe, so I was able to meet, I think Mukunda Prabhu know that we used to go to the High Commissioner office, had the programs there. But it was through the introduction of Bhavisha Prabhu.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so he was the area administrator, he was commissioner of customs for Oyo State. So he had a lot of resources. So he actually pushed the preaching. And then the temple was very close to the university because this Agbowo shopping complex was just opposite the main gate of the University of Ibadan, and behind the Agbowo complex was the Iskcon temple. So it gave us the opportunity to cultivate the students, cultivate the lecturers, and We started a vegetarian restaurant, and many lecturers, many students were coming. And in fact, we organized a lecture for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj at the university at the Faculty of Agric Auditorium. And we got the dean of the faculty to chair the occasion, to chair the function. And it was one of the amazing, great lectures that university had ever had. The place was packed. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he delivered a very powerful speech. That the next day, it was a Friday evening, the next day, the temple was full. Lecturers, professors, students, the whole temple was full. There was no space for people.
Mm. Mm. Wow. For some reason, Prabhuji's internet is not favoring us much, but by the mercies of the Parampara, we've had more than enough. Yeah, Shima Vara Prabhu, you have something to say?
Madhvan is talking.
Please accept our humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada, all glory to
Hi.
Gurudev, all glory to the assembly devotees. So, thank you very much. Wonderful memories. But it seems there is some omission. It seems there's some omission about how the Ibadan temple started.
Okay.
So
No.
it's like it's been taken from the middle. The first temple in Ibadan was not Agbowo.
Yes,
It's
it was in a flat given by one personality from
it's not personality. It was a prince, and
Yes.
it was a king to be a prince, and then later he became the king of Elisha, Aromolara.
Yeah.
He owned the place.
Yes.
So he was gave that flat,
yes.
and it was flat later on that Babisha helped to get this place.
yes.
And the story of how the guy gave the flat, it's a very interesting story. Devotees met him. That time, Adidev Prabhu used to go with Aridam party. And Adidev was such a wonderful Medanga player, you know. Maybe he used to be a bata player before. When he was playing, you know, people would dance. Anybody would dance. He does. So Adidev Prabhu got in touch with this guy. They gave him book. And he went to some party with his friends. And because he had gotten the Prabhupada book and he had read about not eating meat, so that day he just decided not to eat meat. Not knowing that Krishna just saved him. So the friend he went with for the party, he ate all the meat. All the meat they served them, he ate them. And then the following day he died.
What?
Yes. And this guy was supposed to be the king in waiting, Prince Aroma. So he saw that, wow, Krishna saved him from just observing, respecting, being vegetarian. So he called the devotees to come and start preaching in his flat. That's how the flat was given. That is the story. And he just died not too long ago. They just replaced him about last week or last month. Some few weeks ago, they just replaced him.
Oh, very recent.
No, he's been the king since then.
Wow.
Then he's been the king of Elisha. So just about ago, they replaced him after his death. So that is how Ibadan temple started before Agbowo came. So that's just a little contribution. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for filling in with this information. Wow, so beautiful. So beautiful. I'm not sure. Mukunda Prabhu, sorry, Madhuvan Prabhu. Sorry, Madhuvan Prabhu, I saw your hand up. You have something to say or ask?
Yes. Hi, Krishna Prabhu. I just want to say I wasn't very happy when Prabhu came to the point of narrating about the Bhagavad Temple, and the network have to start having problems. But
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy Vara Prabhu came in and gave the narration. Because of course I need to be very, very interested in the story. I started coming to temple at that should be 1985 precisely. I started coming to the temple, and Prabhu Vara was the president at that time.
Okay. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing that. His Grace SRIVAS, that's when Achari is not back yet. But I just wanted to share this briefly, that some of us are pretty much prepared to die for His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. Why? Because like I was having a Chaitanya Charitamrita class with some of my God brothers. We usually do this Gita and agree. And this topic came up that in the Bible there is a verse that the devotees were saying that they love God because God first loved them. And so we love Bhaktivedanta Maharaj because he first loved us. Like Mukunda Prabhu was sharing, they were telling him that do not travel to Ghana yet because the environment is harsh. And still, he went to Ghana. And when he went to Ghana and they offered him the food they had, which was just bread, he said, well, that's not too bad as you described it. He says, Maharaj, we reserve this for you. And Maharaj said, no, I actually do not like bread that much. Give to the devotees. So there was a time I was in Ghana, and His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Damodara Maharaj, Parakshit Prabhu then, had sneaked out from Lagos to come to Accra to come and inform His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj not to visit Nigeria so soon, because some people were plotting evil against him. See, so when Gurudev was told of this, excuse me to say, generally what everybody would do is that, okay, if that is the case, then I will stay away. But he cut short all his plans in Ghana and traveled to Nigeria just to go there and address this situation. So this is the guru we are following. We're trying to study and serve Guru and Krishna. But I would like to ask this question. When I joined devotional service, of course, I joined very, very late. But when I joined devotional service, I lived in a temple for almost 4 years. I never knew that my guru was called Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. All I knew was Shri Krishna Pad. And I loved it, and I still love it. So my question is, when did Krishna Pad come into the picture? Because Srivas Prabhu, is he still here? Yes. I had gone out on Sankirtan and I went to see Arjun, that Indian guy who used to sell products. And then at that time, Gurudev's book, Spiritual Warrior 1, had come out. So I went to try to sell him one. So he saw it and he says, oh, this is B.T. Swami. He's my friend. So I was thinking to myself, who is B.T. Swami? Because even in that book, at the time, the name in that book was Swami Krishnapad. So if devotees may share, these old devotees we have here, if you may share how Krishnapad, the name Krishnapad, came into the picture, please. Hare Krishna.
So I'm not going to share on that, Saha. I'll let some others, and then I'll see if there's a need for me to say anything about that. But I did want to clarify one point
Please
about
do.
us going to Ghana. So something to note is we really didn't do anything unless it was instructed by Guru Maharaj, by Bhakti Tirtha Swami. He was the one that arranged really for us to go to Ghana. He was the one that suggested, at the time, when the times we should go. Everywhere we went in Africa, all of the travels we did, it was orchestrated by him. He even orchestrated the car that we would travel in. So we never really just made decisions on our own to go anywhere. Just want to make sure that that's clear. And then also when Ekendra Prabhu was sharing about the preaching that was being done on Victoria Island, I'm sure that some of that preaching was because Ekendra is a preacher, and so I'm sure that some of that was coming from his heart. However, I do remember Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj instructing us in how to distribute books in sets of books, because as you know, that was what he did. He spent his life distributing sets of books. And so he would share with us different pointers on how to do that. And I remember going to Victoria Island many, many times, with Ekendra to distribute books. So just that point, those points of reference, that everything that was going on really, I mean, we are individuals and certainly we are empowered in different ways. However, nothing was really done without Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj having his hand in all of it, really, in all of it. So I kind of just wanted to point that out. And the point about when the name, the spiritual, the name that he got was after he started taking disciples. And I'll let some others elaborate on that, because he was given that name, Srila Krishnapad, by a couple of devotees, actually this devotee from Australia that wrote his pranam. And that came after he started taking initiation, which was in 1986, when he started initiating. And SRIVAS might have a little more clarity with that, but I do know that devotee, Ekendra might also have some idea, because that devotee, I clearly remember that devotee wearing black dhotis that wrote Gurudev's pranam, because he was some kind of a Pujari priest or, something like that. So there are certain points that I just will always clarify, because West Africa would not have happened if it wasn't for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. Yeah. I mean, it would have happened because Krishna is arranging everything. Yeah. However, as Ekendra said, because of that dream and that dedication and love for Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's heart was in West Africa. And I'll share some more about that.
Well, thank you.
I can remember clearly, it was in 1985 when Maharaj was appointed
initiating Guru, yes.
Guru. But he waited for 1 year before he actually started initiating. I was initiated in 1985. And at that time, it was April of 85. That time I was doing Sankirtan in Miami. I was still in Miami Temple. And that time we got the announcement that Bhakti Maharaj and some other devotees have been appointed the initiating Guru. So at that time, and then some senior devotee, I think Dravida Prabhu and one other devotee. So I asked them that, one devotee who knows that if they can write a pranam from Maharaj. And then one of the devotees suggested that maybe it should be called Titapad, because this was when the time everybody become Guru, they have pad name. So they suggested the Titapad, and then I asked them they should write a pranam from Maharaj. So now pranam was written, the pranam mantra was written, but that was never used because another pranam mantra was already written. I don't know who finally wrote the one which been used now. Which has been used now. I don't know who wrote that one.
Yeah.
And of course, when I get back to Washington, D.C., then we heard that, okay, Maharaj is going to be called Krishnapad. So maybe that's actually coming from him. I don't know how he got that name.
No,
Then-
I have the documents, the documentation of when he got that name and who.
Yeah.
We were
Actually,
calling Krishna Pada from 85, though. Right from 85, we were calling him Krishna Pada.
yeah, Haribol.
Yeah, go ahead, Mukunda Prabhu.
Yeah, we were in Zambia when Maharaj was appointed to be initiating Guru.
Hmm.
At that time, I remember when we were corresponding, I had just started studying Sanskrit with the lady who lived on the end of our block. Her name was Mrs. Thakur in Zambia. And I asked Maharaj if I could write the pranam mantra. He told me it was already written, and the person who wrote it was Gaur Kesh, who was the
Right.
Pujari in Iskcon. He was
Yeah.
the person who used to do all the yajnas and so forth. He was in Tirupati at the time with Radhanath Maharaj and Gaur Kesh, and Gaur Kesh wrote the pranam mantra for him that we have today. The name Krishna Pad, yeah, was from Gaur Kesh as well. And as Ishwara Prabhu said at the time, this is prior to the big meetings in Vrindavan in 1986, everyone the title. Mhm.
Haribol,
Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mother Parvati Ki Jai.
Haribol, Dandavas Pranam, everyone. Hari
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Haribol.
So, from my remembrance, Gurudev's first American initiation was in January of 1986 in New Vrindavan. And prior to that, I think I met him in 1980. I want to say 1983. And when I first met him, he was never introduced as Bhakti Tirtha. It was always Krishnapad.
Jai!
Always Krishnapad.
Jai!
Always Krishnapad. That's what was happening in Cleveland. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't speak for what was happening around the world. And so when I took initiation, all the devotees here always refer to him as Krishnapad. And then sometime later, there was a decision by some other authorities that the pod name would be, it would no longer be used. However, you know, for those of us that started with that name, it's like a special name you call your dad.
Mhm.
And someone else says, well, no, don't call your dad that. So it was very difficult, very difficult.
Very difficult.
But
I agree with
it's
you.
because it was the name that I learned initially. It was the name that I most it resonates with me the most, because that's just how we were introduced to him. So yeah, like the African devotees, there was no Bhakti Tirtha Swami. That wasn't, I mean, we knew that name, of course, we knew that name, but that wasn't the name we used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah. I think, yes.
Yeah. We never actually used the word Krishnapad till around 1986. He was always known as Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And Krishnapad came, as Vrajalila Didi was saying, when after taking guruship, when he was given that, then during that title, he was given Krishnapad. In fact, I remember when he initiated people in Zambia, but he initiated, what is the name? Sankirtan, Rishi Kumar, and I forgot he initiated them on behalf of
Kirtanan.
Shila Kirtananda. Then he was not Krishnapad. Then later on, he told me that they gave him the name because I was not there. So he told me, they gave him the name Krishna Pad. And if I could ask the devotees to use it. So I introduced that name to the devotees in Ghana before I left Ghana 86. Or yeah, later in 86, and I came to Zambia. So yeah, Krishna Pad was, we were not using Krishna Pad. Krishna Pad was used when he got the sannyas, when he started initiating. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I do want to add,
Yes.
and I've shared this with the devotees before, and I keep sharing it, and until I die, I don't know, some devotees choose this, some devotees don't. However, he actually shared with me to tell the devotees to not use the name Krishnapad because there was so much conflicts about those pod names being honorific titles. And as we all know, all of us know, that His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, whether you call him Krishnapad or not, that one of the things about him is that he was always wanting to have relationships, especially with his God family. He valued relationships, you know, having really positive and nourishing relationships. And so when it became really crazy with how the name was being used, abused, whatever, he said, you know what? Don't let devotees call me that name. Let them just call me Bhaktitirtha Swami. So privately, he said, especially in public, he said, especially in public. Now, privately, if devotees choose to use that name, of course, that's a name, as everyone is saying, that they knew him by that name, they revere that name. However, he wasn't attached to the name. And remember, when he was leaving his body, one of the things that he said, I'm not Bhaktitirtha Swami, I'm not Krishnapad, I'm not any of these things. So yeah, this has been a point that I believe some devotees take to heart and some choose to keep doing that. I think the question is, what do we do that because we want to just be rebellious, or do we do that because it's dear to our hearts? And that's a question that we all need to question within ourselves internally.
Well, thank you so much, Mother Rajalila. Mother Shri Upanishad has had her hand raised for a very long time, as well as Sriman Varacharya. So,
No, say, please, I wanted to say Mother Upanishad has the story of the origin of that name Krishnapad. She had once narrated it, I heard it. Just going to ask if it's in the Sangha, she should be given the chance to speak.
Okay. Mother Shri Upanishad, please, you may unmute. And we apologize for keeping your hand up for so long.
Hare Krishna. No worries, no problem. It's wonderful to be amongst you, wonderful, wonderful Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. I have two questions. Not two questions, but I have one question, but I wanted to confirm something in reference to Bhaktitirtha Swami's name. And I encourage everyone to read Black Lotus, because Maharaj himself explains the whole history and story behind Swami Krishnapad or Krishnapada. So if we would read that, then we would get all clarification on why he had the name changed to Bhaktitirtha Swami. He explains it. He shares it with us. So there won't be any, misconceptions and emotional, outbursts. And please, then you should read it, I suggest. And the other question was that, were there any female devotees preaching in the Africa? I know Rajalila, but were there other female devotees around at the time?
You mean like local Vaishnavis?
Vaishnavis, yes.
Yeah, local.
Vaishnavis.
Yes. Yeah.
There were local Vaishnavis made, as I believe Ekendra shared, that we had one devotee, Jamini, that joined us in Ghana. There were a few Vaishnavis from Nigeria And then in Ghana, of course, there are quite a few Vaishnavis that came in during the time we were there in Ghana and since and after we left. So yes, there were Vaishnavis. And that is a beautiful question, Shishupanishad, because it's nice to be able to hear from the Vaishnavis.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I understand Janadas
Vaishnavis.
Prabhu. Sorry, I understand Janadas Prabhu is one of the very, very early devotees there. Actually joined with his wife. So I believe, from what I heard from some other senior devotees, that Janada's wife was actually like the first local Vaishnavi in Ghana. But I don't remember her name. I knew her, but I don't know her name.
And one of
Ruchira, who is Srivas's wife, she's a very senior devotee from Nigeria.
Yes.
And she has many pastimes about how the yatra, got even when she came. So many stories that she could share. However, she might not generally.
Ruchira was one of the early one who joined. She joined around 82. She joined. So yeah, Ruchira, and there was Brinda was there.
Theravali was Ganadas's wife.
What is the name?
Theravali. Theravali.
Oh,
And
okay.
Gifty, the little girl.
Taravali is the name. Taravali.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also one young girl.
Actually, in Ghana, there was this
Gifty.
devotee who was the first, actually the first in Ghana.
Bhaktin Elizabeth.
Bhaktin Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You remember her?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bhaktin Elizabeth.
Okay.
Haribo, one more thought in reference to Swami Krishnapad.
Yeah.
I think Mukunda Prabhu had mentioned the Sankritist name who suggested the name Krishnapada for Guru when he was making his pranam prayers. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but his name was Gora Keshava. I think Mukunda had mentioned that or said his name.
Yes,
Is he still around? Is he still alive?
He lives in Hawaii. He lives in Hawaii. And I've seen him from time to time. He usually does a lot of yagyas for big Iskcon events, but he's more or less kind of in the Sri Sampradaya, more or less.
He's alive.
Attraction to South India. But he's still a Sun devotee, but he's predominating feeling of Sri Sampradaya.
Jai. Haribo, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Hari.
Brother Gail, you may unmute. Gail.
Just before then, if I can, I had another mother that was around then.
Okay.
She's the of Paramatma Das. They were both.
Oh, you're breaking up, Shimavara. Can you repeat yourself? We didn't hear what you were saying.
Alongside with Chandrakali and Mother Rushira.
Can you just repeat what you just said?
That there is another mother.
Yeah.
She's of Paramatma Das. And Paramatma Das happened to be the one who started the first restaurant in Lagos at Lukoju Road. So she's called Jatila, Mother Jatila.
Jatila, yes.
They all took initiation.
Okay, Jatila.
And of course, Parameshwari.
Actually, we had two
Jatilas.
Yeah. Except Parameshwari was pregnant, so she was really being a mom.
Yes.
So, yeah.
We had two Jatilas. They were all from Ghana.
The Mother Parameshwari, she had the first baby, first African baby. African baby. Right in Lagos Temple. We had our first baby that time.
Then we have Siki Mahiti's wife, Sangha.
Yes.
Mother Sangha.
That was later. There was Madri also, Shantamaraj, you knew her, right? Madri.
Madri Devi. She's from Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was one young lady who traveled all the way from Europe across the desert by herself.
Devaki.
Devaki.
Yeah.
Devaki. Devaki.
Her name was Denny, I think, before she got initiated.
Dennis, yeah.
Yeah, Denny before she guessed, yes.
That's a big story.
Devaki.
That's a big story itself. That's a big story.
All right. So, Mother Gill, please you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, going back to the name of Bhakti Tirtha Swami versus, Krishna Pad. Well, for me, Mother Brother Leela, you would be the authority on that. That would trump any author of any biography. But I'm just wondering, are you in agreement with what is stated in the Black Lotus? I do have the book, but the plastic is still on it, so I don't know what it says. But if I happen to open it, I'm just wondering if you would agree with that accounting if you yourself have read it.
Yeah, I've read it. And actually, when my Guru Maharaj commissioned that book to be written, that was right. Satyaraj Prabhu, of course, as you know, Gail, he wrote the book.
Yeah.
And we, Ekendra Prabhu and myself, we were at that time taking his ashes to Mayapur. And so Satyaraj was in contact with us. However, Chintamani Devi was giving most of the narrations of the book. And Chintamani was there. She was one of the first devotees in the Institute. So she actually knew all of the history of the Institute. And what she didn't know, I was able to give her information, especially from Africa and other devotees also. So yes, I haven't read it lately, which I will do since this Ishopanishad mentioned that. It's kind of a book you keep reading over and over because there's so much in it. But I yes, in general, I do. There was some people that had significant contributions that were left out of the Black Lotus book. And yeah, so we really do need to kind of write another book with some of those devotees.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was, So I just wanted to get your seal of approval on that.
Well,
I guess.
PRABHU.
Hare Krishna.
Jai, I just wanted to add something to what Raja Leela said. There are so many other devotees that were a part of that Black Lotus writing that, again, there were not mentioned, that didn't get the opportunity to even speak or share.
Yeah.
And there does need to be another book.
Yeah. And I want to share so that there's no blame game. Gurudev wanted the book to be completed like before even it was completed. Satyaraj was really under pressure to get that book done. And I remember Chandramali Maharaj was calling me in India and at one time coming there chastising me because it was so difficult for me at the time because I was grieving to give information. So there was a lot of emotions around writing that book. On Satyaraj Prabhu, he was so pressured. So that's the reason why and yes, you're absolutely right. There's so many devotees that made so much more contributions. So
absolutely. Hare Krishna. Jai Haribol.
Thank you, my dear.
Archana Prabhu, we're so happy to have you here. Please, you may unmute. Archana Prabhu.
Archana.
Yes, Sadev.
Hare Krishna, my obeisances.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Yes. Hello. Hello to everybody. Yes. About the early models in the temple, I can remember Ekechakra's wife.
Yes, Ekechakra's wife.
Mother Anakuta is one of our early models. So I just want to remember you.
Okay, Anakuta.
Hey, Archana Prabhu.
Yeah, Mahamantra Prabhu.
Santa Maharaj now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Shanta Maharaj.
All
How are
right.
you?
I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
And how are you too?
I'm fine.
We thank
I've been
God.
hearing about you, but I've not seen you since.
Yes, that is true. One day we will see ourselves.
I was in Ghana. I just came back from Ghana.
Oh, so okay, this time we'll get to know each other more.
Yeah.
Looks
Yeah.
like everybody will be seeing each other mostly in the next life. Everybody's old.
Well, dear devotees, we thank you all. This is a very rare lifetime opportunity to have the association of all these great devotees by whose grace we, the new generation and the generation to come, are all able to participate in devotional service. So it's impossible to pay you back for what you've done for us and for the world, but at least we can express our appreciation for what you've done for us by verbally mentioning to your hearing that we appreciate you so much. But I believe even higher and better than that is try to live the training and the teachings you give us all. So this is our prayer. And with that, we go to Priya Saki. Priya Saki, please, you'll be on mute.
Haribo.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Haribo. This is such a wonderful thing to hear about the life and everything that went on through the days. I'm just enjoying every little bit of it, and I thank everybody for doing this. I was just thinking, like everybody mentioning the Matages. Do we know where they are, where like their descendants are? Does anybody know, like at least one of them that have like, you know, their generations, and we can like kind of track them and see how their stories were too? That would have been amazing.
Yeah,
Haribo.
very good. Very good.
Thank you, Priya.
Yeah, I think those, those early devotees, me, Richard Rascals, I had them sitting here, I don't even know them. So the older devotees, they may know them and probably know their whereabout. And that will be very helpful, you know, because no matter what, no matter where somebody may be, I remember visiting one hospital one time, and they had something written. It says, once a Catholic, always a Catholic. So like Mother Rajalila was saying, once you become a devotee, you're always a devotee, regardless of the externals. So if it is possible to trace back these devotees and their line, that will be very helpful and very beautiful. But we would like to see if no devotee has anything else to say, and probably because devotees are tired.
That's one
Yes,
more.
sir.
Yes.
I did not hear Mother Chandravali's name.
Mother
The
Vakunta's mom.
Mother Vakunta's mom.
Yeah.
I think.
I did not hear Mother Lakshmi also. I thought Prabhu Achana will remember Mother Lakshmi. Mother Lakshmi, we did not hear her.
Shanta Maharaj, if you're still here, do you have any recollection of Mother Chandravali?
So if
maybe we are moving too fast.
Maybe we
Since Shanta Maharaj is talking tomorrow, maybe we might hear it.
Yeah. Shanta Maharaj is speaking tomorrow.
Because we had one Mother Chandravali in Nigeria and Lagos.
Nigeria.
Yeah. Now, because of the cultural situation, because of our culture, especially Nigeria, the women will not, even though they may be visiting, but they will not normally join. Especially those days when we are mostly, young men. So it's not a usual thing to have, women joining. It's just not. It's just. It actually took few years before the women started really joining the temple.
Actually, that Chandra Valley was from Ghana. I don't know where she is now.
She's still in Ghana.
No, not the Chandra. The Chandra Valley. She was the sister of one boy that joined us. It was there earlier on. His name was Godwin.
Yeah, two of them.
So
okay.
Chandra Valley, he was a sister of Godwin. It was actually part of us. It was part of us early on in Lagos. So Chandra Valley, but she joined later on.
Yeah, Mother Chandra Valley, she's the teacher. She joined in Ghana.
Yes.
So that's a different
Chandra Valley in Nigeria, she's also a Ghanaian.
No, it's Igbo.
Igbo.
Yeah.
No, she told me she was Ghanaian.
No, she's definitely not Ghanaian because she was the sister of a Godwin. And Godwin is an Igbo boy. So
really?
Godwin's is
sister,
that Chandra Valley not the one at the Accra temple now?
Yeah, she's actually living in Accra temple as we speak.
Okay, anyway, I know this particular Chandra Valley.
Maybe we're talking about two different Chandra Valleys.
But
this Chandra Valley joined in Nigeria, but she is a Ghanaian.
Yes, I know of that. But you are talking of Godwin's sister who is Gemini.
Oh, Gemini.
Gemini is Godwin's sister is Gemini.
The princess.
I know Godwin very well.
Okay.
Yes.
And I do want to add, Ishwar Prabhu, that although it may not have been the culture for the ladies to move into the ashram, still before we left Nigeria, before Ekendra, myself and Mahamantra left Nigeria, we did have a women's ashram, and women were joining. That's how Jamini had joined in Nigeria and actually
by the time I left Nigeria, there was never any woman in the temple. Maybe after I left, because I left beginning of '83.
Well, we were in Ghana in '81.
Hold on, Ishwara.
That was Ghana.
Do you remember when we were in Elukpeju, there was this Nigerian lady who was always coming?
No, they were coming. They were coming, but not to join the temple. No lady was in the temple.
Yeah, there wasn't. I think there was
that
no.
One, I accept.
There was no room, but they were regular there mostly.
Yeah, they were coming, but there was no women ashram, especially after Mother Virginia also left. Maybe if you are in Nigeria at that time, maybe we will have had them stay.
In Ghana, we had full house.
Yeah, because the Mother Virginia was this.
No, the temple on Murtala Muhammad Way road, they had Modest Ashram.
Yeah,
and
that was later. That was '84 when they opened that temple.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, my dear devotees, I think this conversation is just sharing with us that we need to encourage the Matajis in West Africa to really have more expression, more voice, because we do need to hear from them. And Ruchira is right there. She has a wealth.
But now there's so many.
Yashoda also, Yashoda.
Yeah, nobody mentioned, nobody mentioned Yashoda.
Yashoda Malayu, yeah.
Point of order. Can I just add something here?
Yes, please.
Regarding this mother's ashram in the temple, in Cocoa Road, when I came to Nigeria, I joined in Ghana, and Mother Richir was staying in the temple.
Yeah.
And I think Chandravali was also staying in the temple. So I don't understand why you say there was no mother's ashram in the temple. So maybe that can be explained.
Until I left, there was no mother ashram until I left.
Oh, well, that's a
So
different story.
I left beginning of '83, so that time there was no mother ashram.
Okay, so
Vishwara Prabhu, I'm coming to live in your ashram in Vrindavan.
Well, I think, dear devotees, my humblest apologies. This is becoming sweeter and sweeter. But we've been here for almost 3 hours. We have 2 hands up, and we're going to take those 2 hands, and then we'll bring this Sangha to a conclusion today, so that the devotees may take enough rest and prepare for another marathon tomorrow. So with that,
it's almost midnight for me in India.
yeah, I'm surprised you're still here. Thank you so much.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
So-
thank you so much, Ishana Prabhu. Achana Prabhu, please you may unmute.
I have to go out. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, I can get some of these devotees. They are still alive. Mother Taravoli, Janada's wife, is still in Accra here.
Good.
And then Mother Lashmi is also in Accra here.
Good.
And Mother Chandravali, the teacher, who is the mother to Mother Vaikunta, is also in Accra here.
Yeah.
Even I'm informing about the very program. Yeah. So I can get all these mothers around.
Good. Good.
Yeah. What about Mother Jatila?
Jatila
Mother
is also, yeah. I can get you Mother Jatila also. I know where
Very
I can
good.
find him.
And Mother Dharma.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Mother Dharma.
Yeah. I can get you Mother Dharma.
Okay. So you are a very good point of contact.
Thank you.
Yes. Mother Shri Upanishad, please give me on mute. And
We get to hear from the mothers.
yeah, it is an honor to end on Mother Shri Upanishad.
Hi, Haribo. I just want to go over the list of the Matajis, the Vaishnavis, and I have Rajalila, Yashoda Mai. There are 2 Jatilas, Sikhi Mahiti's wife, Sangha, Madhuri Devi. There's a Devaki, and there's Chandravali, Anakula, Mother Dharma or Dorma, I'm not sure. Priyasaki and Lakshmi and Rishira. Is that everyone that you guys have mentioned? Everyone, not you guys, I'm sorry. Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis mentioned.
Germany.
Kadamba, Davidas, Kadamba.
Oh, Kadamba.
Kadamba.
Akata.
Germany, David Darcy.
Wow.
Germany.
Are you Germany?
Okay.
Mother Brenda, the wife of Shruti Das. Mother Brenda.
Yashoda.
Yeah, Yashoda Mai. Wow.
I have Mashoda and Rajalila.
Yeah.
Jai.
Yeah.
Well, Hare Krishna.
Stuff.
Thank you so much.
Just if you mention Mai, then you should mention Vishnu Priya because they were together at that time. Vishnu
I
Priya.
have Vishnu Priya. I have her. I think I have her.
Hmm.
Jai Vishnu Priya.
Didn't we have Chitraleka?
Vishnu Priya.
We had Chitraleka, we had Chaitanya Lila.
Yeah.
Some other mothers, but for a long time we don't know where they are.
Yeah.
She was, I think she was Chaitanya Prayer, right?
Chaitanya Prayer.
Yeah.
Chitraleka.
So I request.
And Rupa Manjari.
Rupa.
Oh, that's Ekat's wife.
Yeah,
But
she was also very young when she joined. And Madam Maharani.
Wow.
Jai Peoples. I mean, and Vaishnavis. So.
Well, Krishna dear devotees, we thank you all. I mean, we cannot thank you enough, but we're still saying that we thank you all for being here today. This is a cross-country marathon. We have 3 days to go. We have Wednesday, Thursday. Wednesday, we have 3 amazing devotees speaking. Thursday, we have 3 amazing devotees speaking. And then Friday, we have all 10 devotees coming together to reminisce all that has been shared, what was left out, and try to connect the dots so that there will be a very perfect map for us to travel from point A to point B. All these histories are to help us understand where we've come from, where we're going, and how to get there. So we thank you all, and we're going to humbly request you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speakers for today, His Grace SRIMAN Mukunda Prabhu, His Grace SRIVAS Vanachari, and all the assembled Vaishnavi devotees for being here and sharing your love and wisdom with us all. Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jakarpataru
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Salika Prabhu, you are the host.
Yes, Prabhuji.
There is